Welcome to the World of Concacaf podcast. Welcome to the news desk. I'm Eric Schmitz.
I'm Jonathan Slape.
I'm Donald Wine.
And we're here to talk about everything that's been going on in Concacaf. First off, thank you to all of our patrons, every single one of you, for supporting our podcast. You can support us as well. Patreon.com/Podcacaf, where you can also hear our bonus episodes, One More Round, get other behind the scenes stuff. We'll send pictures from all the trips we're taking. It's a lot of fun stuff, but also you help this happen.
And Eric, it sounds like for our patrons that we're going to get soon the capability to link our patron podcast episodes to Spotify. Mm-hmm. So you'll be able to, and then be able to populate it from there. So it'll be easier. You won't have to always log in to see what's going on. It may just come straight to you if you are a patron. So make it easy on yourself. Yeah. Sign up. It will make it easy for you, hopefully.
You can get those little notifications on your phone. New episode, One More Round. It's like, ooh, I can't wait to find out what they were talking about.
Some junk. It's probably some junk, but it's fun junk.
It's CONCACAF junk.
Yeah, it's always junk.
All right. Well, obviously a big summer in soccer. The Women's World Cup still going on. We're going to recap everything that happened as far as CONCACAF goes in that tournament because it deserves our attention. But first, we have important stuff to talk about. The Caribbean Club Shield just completed, and we got to give you all the details. First off, so what is the Caribbean Club Shield? The Caribbean Club Shield is actually a qualifying competition for the Caribbean Cup, which in itself is a qualifying competition for the CONCACAF Champions Cup, which used to be CONCACAF Champions League, because nothing can ever stay the same in this confederation. Just keep changing everything. So this Caribbean Club Shield, again, qualifies you for this other tournament, which is actually about to start in like 2 weeks from right now. This is August 14th, we're recording. And two teams from, well, let's just say it's the collection of islands that participate in this Club Shield. We've got teams from Aruba.
Can I say real quick, though, before we get into the teams, when you all out there find out that, yes, there is a Caribbean Club Shield and that it exists, and you kind of look it up, this is a real team, fake team tournament. This is the biggest real team, fake team tournament in history, because all these team names are spectacular. And half of them, you're just like, you will read them and be like, yo, this can't be real. This is what these guys were talking about. None of these teams are real.
Robin Hood
won the tournament.
Yo, you're spoiling this thing. But anyways, you got teams from all over the Caribbean: Aruba, Cayman Islands, Curacao, Dominican Republic, French Guiana, Guadeloupe, Jamaica, Martinique, Puerto Rico, Saint Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, St. Martin, Suriname, Trinidad and Tobago, Turks and Caicos. All of their champions go into this. This is like the Champions League of the Caribbean, really. And what's up for grabs is 2 spots in the Caribbean Cup. Now, what they did is they did a group stage, and then they went to a knockout where once they got to the semifinals, the 2 semifinal winners automatically qualified. And then they still had a championship in a third place game that didn't really do much anything. Just because we're here. So the semifinals. Now, the other important note is, you know how like big this competition is? They held the entire thing. They hosted the entire thing in Saint Kitts and Nevis. The SKNFA Technical Center was the host site of the final rounds, and between that and the Warner Park Sporting Complex, all of the games were in St. Kitts and Nevis. So next time we got to be a little more alert and try to get ourselves down there for like 2 weeks of Caribbean club soccer in a beautiful tropical destination.
I mean, I say this as someone who's a lifelong Club Sando and SWA Sharks fan, that you got to get down there.
Yes, for sure. So your 4 semifinalists were Robin Hood of Suriname, Metropolitan of Cuba, Club Sando of Trinidad and Tobago, and Golden Lion of Martinique. Yes, all real teams. This is not real team fake team. This is all real teams. Robin Hood got the big 5-0 win over Metropolitan, and Golden Lion snuck out a 2-1 win over Club Sando. Both of them advanced to the Concacaf Caribbean Cup. And in the final, Robin Hood defeated Golden Lion 5-1 to lift the Caribbean Club Shield. Now, great for soccer in Suriname, great for soccer in Martinique. They're going on to this bigger competition. Unfortunately, with all these changes, you don't get as much intermingling of club teams between countries anymore. The Caribbean Cup field, half Jamaican teams, a couple teams from Trinidad and Tobago, a bunch of teams from Dominican Republic. It's not as diverse as it used to be, but still a very important competition. The story that I think we need to take from the Caribbean Shield is O&M FC, which if you follow us on social media, you might have seen. So O&M FC is based out of the Dominican Republic. Dominican Republic and Saint Kitts and Nevis are separate islands. You have to fly planes to get back and forth. Apparently, the only flights to go between the islands are Tuesdays and Saturdays. So O&M FC plays their last group stage game. They finished third in Group C. They play their last group stage game on Tuesday, August 8th. Sucks. Next flight out Saturday. So they're waiting around, get to the airport Saturday, their flight gets canceled. They get stranded in St. Kitts and Nevis. And apparently, I don't know if you guys saw the follow-up to this, they clashed with the police at the airport, and a couple guys got like pepper sprayed and stuff. Only in we're recording this on Monday. We are not sure if they're getting off the island. That's still to be determined.
Look, it's very clear that nobody on that team listens to this show, because if they listened to this show, we would have told them that this was going to happen, because it happened to us in March. They didn't listen. They didn't heed our lessons.
In their defense, it seems that it's a different airline. It's not the same infliction that we faced, but still, as is life in the Caribbean, sometimes you just get stuck on the island. Can't go anywhere. Ain't no one coming to pick you up.
Couldn't rent a boat. We tried that. We tried the boat, the charter flight technique. None of that works either. So sometimes you just got to buy multiple flights and multiple airlines, or just be like, you know what? I was waiting for one of those players just be like, look, guys, you're on your own. I'm getting out of here, and I got this seat on this plane. I don't know where we're going, but it ain't going to be here. Like, figure out a way to get to another island or to like the United States or something, so that they can get home.
Yeah.
But
it's
that's
about
just what I would do.
It's about a 500-mile distance between the two countries.
Right.
So about an hour flight, which is a long haul for the Caribbean, So Godspeed to O&M FC. We're rooting for you. All right. Now on to the women's game. The Women's World Cup still going on, but CONCACAF has completed their play. So as far as we're concerned, the thing is over. Lots of big stories to take out of this tournament. We'll kind of just run through group by group the CONCACAF teams and how they performed. Group B leading off, big shocker, Canada failing to advance to the knockout stage, finishing third in Group B with 1 win, 1 draw, 1 loss on 4 points. Costa Rica finishing dead last in Group C on 0 points. Haiti finishing dead last in Group D on 0 points, although they played pretty well. In Group E, you had the United States advance to the knockout stage in second place, which was big drama, with 1 win, 2 draws, and 5 points. In Group F, Jamaica, the Reggae Girls, huge results, finishing second place in Group F, advancing to the knockout stage for the first time on 1 win, 2 draws, and 5 points. And also in that group, Panama finishing last with 3 losses and 0 points. So we had 6 CONCACAF teams in the tournament, 2 get through to the knockout stage. Both fall in the round of 16, the U.S. falling in penalty kicks. In Jamaica, Jamaica also not advancing to the quarterfinals as well. Jonathan, what's your big takeaway from the Women's World Cup for CONCACAF?
There's a few takeaways, and like I'm gonna steer away from the obvious stuff with the U.S. national team.
Yeah, we'll talk the U.S. later. Let's talk.
But I would say, and I'm gonna give to, I think Panama, while they did not win a game, on the last day they went up on France. They scored the first goal. I mean, they lost 3-6 to France, but for Panama to do that away, for the first time in the World Cup, that's pretty impressive. And I think the other thing is, I know a lot was made about Canada not advancing. Christine Sinclair, her national team career comes to an end. And I really think they lost that. I mean, a lot was made about the 4-0 loss to Australia, but I honestly think that that came down to where they lost. That was the 0-0 draw against Canada. I mean, against Nigeria. Opening up the tournament without getting a result against Nigeria. The Nigeria team that advanced the knockout rounds and played pretty well, but it's still for a powerhouse like Canada. A lot of people thought, and then probably the story of the tournament is all of the big teams that went out early.
Yeah. Don, what about you?
I think you got to look at Jamaica. They're the first Caribbean team to make it to the knockout stage of World Cup. Congratulations to them. They played extraordinary in a group that many considered one of the strongest groups, if not the strongest group at the World Cup. They qualified for the round of 16. They beat out Brazil to get there. And yes, they beat out Panama, who Jonathan, I agree. They showed out well. If you remember after that game, they had just lost 6-3, but they were still partying in the stands for an hour after the game because they're like, yo, we're here. We went up against one of the best teams in the world in France. We dropped 3 on them. Yeah, they dropped 6 on us, but they were supposed to do that. And I think that's the beauty of this World Cup is you had a lot of teams making their debut. And while they may not have advanced, they did really well doing it. But I think Jamaica, of the CONCACAF teams, there's obviously a lot of storylines here, but theirs was the most positive storyline. Them getting to the round 16, the way they did, doing it for 2 games without Bunny Shaw, who got a red card in the first game and had to sit out the second game. She is, if you've seen her play, she's just lethal when she has the ball. So for them to be able to qualify out of that group without their best player and get to the round 16 and really, I mean, against Colombia, they had a chance to win it. Like they had a chance to send it to extra time. They had chances to win it. They just came up short. And, Lauren Donaldson, their coach, who has some American ties, but obviously is Jamaican. He had a great game plan in each game to make sure that this team maximized what it could do. And, the future's bright for Jamaica. I think they showed a lot of, of poise, and they obviously earned a lot of respect around the world with their play.
Yeah. We didn't even mention, we talked about Panama going up on France. Didn't even mention the fact that goal was an absolute banger.
Yes.
Marta Cox, maybe one of the goals of the tournament. To do that against France, absolutely great for not only just for Panama, but for the regions, like to see that individual skill. But yeah, Jamaica going through that group with France and Brazil and going unbeaten, getting out of that group without a loss, really, really great. But for me, Haiti, they ended up with 0 points, but they probably got the rawest deal out of as far as like the point to performance ratio. They lose 1-0 to England in the opening match on a penalty. They lose 1-0 to China in the second match on a penalty. And then in a game that was really a must win, they go down 1-0 to Denmark on a penalty. And then the only goal from open play was a 90 plus 10, insurance goal in that match. And obviously, talking about, again, individual talent, I thought you saw that from Haiti and you saw that from Panama. And it makes you feel good about where the future of CONCACAF is with the women's game. because 32 teams made this tournament. 6 of them were from Concacaf. Like the men's tournament will never get that kind of ratio, at least not for the time being, just because like CONCACAF's confederation is not looked upon in that way. Like they don't have the opportunity to get that much representation. And it's just good to see that many countries getting a chance to say, hey, we made the World Cup. And it's good for the women's game to see Haiti and Panama and Costa Rica getting to like follow the tournament. Because with all that individual talent up top, all you need is to grow the depth. You need to grow the pool. And I think this is going to be very good for doing that.
Yeah, I want to say before we, in talking anything around the U.S. is I think as a whole, this World Cup, we saw a lot of, the big teams fail to even make it out of the out of the group stage. Germany didn't make it, Italy, Brazil, Canada. And so, we've seen a lot of some other big teams go out early. And I think it's great for the fact that, the women's game for a long time has been dominated by the United States, and a select few European teams. And so it's great to see, it's great to see a lot of these newer countries making runs, because I think it goes a long way to showing federations that if they take the women's game seriously and put in the resources that the game deserves, you can get great results from that. And so I think that it'll go a long way. There's a good chance we see someone win it for the first time. So,
and keep in mind, in the case of Canada, they have been dealing with their own kind of pay dispute. I mean, we've talked about how Canada soccer is just a mess, to put it lightly. And they've had to deal with that even all the way up to preparation for this tournament. And, I don't even think they even had a lot of games to prepare for this tournament. They didn't play a friendly until they got over to Australia. So I'm sorry, they had one, kind of unofficial friendly before they went over. But it sounded like they were distracted a little bit by all of that, and just how their preparation for this just wasn't the same, and they've been having to deal with that and just all these different issues. We had Jamaica, who had not one but 2 GoFundMes to get to the Women's World Cup and see how they performed. They performed brilliantly in the face of that. Haiti had their issues getting to the Women's World Cup. Panama had their issues getting to Women's World Cup. And that's just this confederation. There are other teams that had their issues in raising funds, or just other, pay disputes, things like that. Being able to watch the games, a lot of these countries didn't have TV deals so that these players could get their shine that they deserve and be on TV when they took the field. So there was a lot of issues that led up to some of the preparation for some of these teams for World Cup. So, hats off to not just, the teams I mentioned, but all the teams for really being able to grind it out and perform. This has been the most competitive Women's World Cup we've ever had. And, people were worried that when they expanded to 32 teams, you'd get a lot of debutantes that weren't ready for the bright lights. All these teams that showed up, no one got really blown out, right? Like Vietnam was dead last, but it's not like Vietnam got blown out except for the last game. There wasn't a lot of blowouts. There was a lot of competitive games, a lot of upsets. As you both mentioned, some of the big teams were eliminated early. And so you kind of see how this game, needs to have the shine it deserves. And for these teams to be able to, in spite of all of the issues, be able to put that kind of performance on the table for the world to see is tremendous. And I think that's one of the best things that come out of this World Cup is the number of standout performances from teams that you may not have heard of.
Now, I do want to clarify, just be on the record. It is funny that Canada didn't make it out of the group stage, right?
Oh, yeah, we laughed.
Yeah.
We laughed.
Yes. We enjoyed it personally. But on the greater whole, I think it's very important that Canada didn't make it to the knockout, especially in light of the U.S. not making it out of the round of 16. So the U.S. technically still the best performing CONCACAF team in the tournament. Let's kind of touch on that because as much as there's been talk, obviously we got stuff to say, but just in general, I'll put it to the group. Do we feel that this is just kind of like this will happen, or is this a sign of issues?
Donald, you seem like you have something to say. I'll let you go first.
Yeah, let me start with this because this is the state of the program, the women's U.S. national team before the World Cup. The team had entered, they were the two-time defending World Cup champs. They'd won 2 in a row. They had been to 3 straight finals, and they lost that third final on penalties, right? So they're really going on an operation where they've been to 3 straight finals, and they've played a lot of games since then against a lot of great teams. And the bare minimum for them was to do something that no team, men or women, had ever done. Go to 4 straight finals and win 3 in a row. No team has ever done that. And so it's kind of hard, right, to kind of say like, man, they really severely underperformed because in theory, they were not supposed to be in this position. They were not supposed to win in 2019. 2015 was real. I mean, 2019, they dominated, but entering the tournament, everyone kept saying, oh, everyone's caught up to them. The world's caught up, this whole narrative. And I can talk for days about how that narrative is stupid. But the actuality is this team had the tall task of doing something that no one had ever done, and they fell short. But they were supposed to fall short because there's a reason why no one has ever won 3 in a row, because it's fucking hard to do.
Yeah.
Right.
And they were going to do something no team had ever done before with a lot of new faces. I think is the other thing too. Like, I mean, we look at any great dynasty in men's or women's soccer, like there's always the time where there is some level of reloading and retooling. A lot of people thought that the last Olympics should have been that time where we saw a lot of people, phased out and a lot of new faces come in. But the U.S. was then trying to do another impossible task where they were trying to be the first team to be both the World Cup winners and the holders of a Olympic gold medal. And so, Vlatko went with a team that he thought gave him the best chance to do that. There, of course, there's weird things with rosters in World Cup, but
they were trying to be the first one to win it back to back, because in 2015 they had held the 2012 gold medal and they had 2015, but they were trying to be the first one back to back. Yeah.
And so there was always going to be a time where they came up short, and they're in like you said, the impossible situation of anything less than winning was falling short. And so now, do I think there was things that the coach could have done to prevent a lot of this stuff that happened? Yes. And I think he's, at the forefront of a lot of the team's issues during the tournament, but they were being held to an impossible standard.
Yeah. I also think this, if I may, because I was at the game against Sweden, obviously, and where we lost in penalties. And as tough a tournament as this was for the United States, that was literally, again, in a sea of them trying to do the impossible, the near impossible happened, right? A trillion scenarios for that game, and no one could have imagined this particular scenario that did happen. The U.S. dominated that game. The U.S. had 15 more shots than Sweden. 4 of them hit the post. 2 of them hit the post in extra time. The opposing keeper had 11 saves in regulation. They dominate extra time. They have, again, 4 more chances to win. 2 of them hit the post. Another, a couple of miraculous saves by the opposing keeper. They get to penalties. They have 1 hit the post. They have 2 people sky it. They still, the opposing keeper, who again had 13 saves to this point, did not stop a single shot in penalties. Our keeper not only stopped one, but became the first keeper, men or women, ever in a World Cup to make a penalty. And we lost the game. Like that is like, that's just soccer, guys. Like there's no possible way that anyone could dream that up and say, putting all those stats on the table, everything skewing so far towards one team that team ends up being the losing team on penalties, again, where the opposing team does not stop a penalty. Like, we had 2 chances to win it in penalties, and 2 chances where one kick and it's over with, and we didn't get it done. And it's just that sometimes just the ball doesn't roll the way you want it to. And that's what was most heartbreaking about it, is that, hey, we didn't play up to our standards leading up to that game, but we did in that game against a team that's really good. I mean, Sweden's number 3 in the world. And for them to do all that and still come up short, like, that's where it again becomes, now it's like, oh, these they came up short, they failed, they did all this. But yeah, they did it, they did all that against a great team and they still lost. That's just sometimes how soccer works. Sometimes the best team on the day doesn't win. And as bad as we had played in that tournament, at least by American standards, they played super well in that game, and that's the one they end up losing.
Yeah. And I think that's what the interesting thing to me is, that like you can look at all these micro level things, like how well they played in that knockout game, and you can look at on the other side, that Portugal game, like they are a few inches away from
going home.
Going home. And I mean, just looking at the highest possible level, like they beat Vietnam 3-0, a game they probably should have buried more. Like, that was the first sign. It's like, I don't really feel great about that performance. They never led at any point in the rest of the tournament. And
you only scored one more goal.
They only scored 1 goal, but like they never led. Like, they never got on the front foot and like had to defend. It was all like games, it was all battling. And at no point did you ever look at them and be like, oh, they look like they are going to, take this game and like run away with it. You never saw that. And I think some of that comes down to coaching. Obviously, we would assume that there will be a change based on the results, because round of 16 is not acceptable for this program. But yeah, and the minutes management you can complain about. You can complain about the tactics. It's like, you knew at some point, like, they weren't going to win. There was going to be a tournament where the team did not win. And the way this happened, like, it just seems so unsettling, because like, you almost wonder, it's like, did they really have enough, or did we just never get to see it?
Right. And yeah, you could break, and obviously we can analyze and overanalyze this particular team, because this obviously is 3 of us. This is our team, and we can, we've been ingrained in how this team is formed over the last 4 years. Right. And even like you mentioned, Jonathan, like, in the Olympics, there was times where there were some signs where people go, hey, maybe we should be making some tactical changes, some personnel changes. And a lot of them didn't happen. We then had, COVID, which kind of took everything out, or at least COVID was before the Olympics. Then after the Olympics, we had a whole year where we lost half the team due to injury. Some of those players that we were relying on didn't come back. So then we had to try and train players to play like them, but they can't be them. It's a lot going on, and it does start at the top. It starts with the coach, the GM, and all that, and just how this has been brewing. But also, this is as close to 2017 for the men as the women have ever gotten. Right, like, this is the worst performance that they have had in any major tournament. They've never not gotten to the quarterfinals of the Olympics. They've never not gotten to the semifinals of the World Cup before now. And this is kind of not necessarily a complete reset like it was for the men after the 2018 or 2017 debacle. It's not a complete hard reset where like blow it up and start over, but it is more of a, hey, we need to do a real thorough evaluation of where we're at and how, if what we're doing needs to change. And the answer is yes, it does. But identifying where we're falling short, whether it be from the development of some of these younger players to, again, evaluating the NWSL, things like that, where things aren't dire, but definitely we're in, just like in college football, even Alabama doesn't win the national championship every year. And every time they don't, they kind of say, yo, we got to figure out how to get back to this point. this is where we're at.
Yeah, and I know you referenced the men in 2017, how it was like kind of used that as an opportunity to kind of reset. But it's like you looking at the women in the pool and some of these players coming up, it's like, yes, the children are the future. Like, you need to go with the kids and let the kids cook. And between the Olympics coming up and this kind of runway you have before the next World Cup, it's like, you need a reset. So kind of just dive in, let the kids get the experience, go play as many games as you can, get them as many minutes as you can.
And you have the Olympics in a year, right? Like the weirdness of this cycle is that, the women have two major tournaments and they're, year apart. So they should be thinking now of, hey, for the Olympics where you have fewer players on the roster, which, I mean, for Vlatko didn't matter because he was arguing for 26 players and he barely played,
played 14 of them.
Yeah, 14 of them in a game. So it's you have to, again, have all these evaluations about which players, we had some, pretty old players. I know some have made that decision for themselves, like Megan Rapinoe is going to be retiring at the end of the year. She'll probably get a send-off of some sort, and then she's out of the national team picture. Julie Ertz, very emotional after the game, said that was her final game. It remains to be seen, like, if, that was made out of emotion, or if she maybe gets a send-off, or if she really is completely done with the national team. You have so many other players that are household names that everyone loves. They are legends of the game. But the questions now have to be, hey, do we start phasing them out? When do we start phasing them out? Is it, do we give them one more run for the Olympics, or do we use this next year, Eric, as you said, as a time to start integrating some of the younger talent, saying, hey, the future of our team is right now, and we need to bring them up and get them involved and get some of these players who didn't make the team into the fold as well. Some of the injured players, Katarina Macario is out there. Mel Swanson, when she gets, better, Mia Fischel, who just moved to Chelsea, like, do we get these players back into the groove and say, hey, this is your team now, take it and gel together? Or do you use this Olympic run, this Olympics next year, is kind of a say, hey, like, let's try to make it one more last run with some of these players before they, go into the sunset.
Yeah.
Play the kids.
Yeah. I think we all want to play the kids as much as we can. Before we move on from the World Cup, Donald, you're back. You went. Mm-hmm. What's your big takeaway? What do you want to share about your trip? What was the best thing that happened to you?
Or do we tease this for one more round?
I mean, give the public something, and then we'll get the nitty gritty.
Okay. Well, I will say for the public, I will say, I've been to Australia before, and love Australia. Melbourne is a top 5 city in the world to me. It is not 5. Being there, like, again, game notwithstanding, had an excellent time. New Zealand was fantastic. The people in New Zealand were fantastic. The fact that they embraced, and it's funny because everyone talks about how Australia has embraced this particular tournament. New Zealand did as well. And yeah, there may be games where, people turn on TV and say, oh, there's not people at the games, but everywhere you went in Auckland and in Wellington, people could watch the game. People could talk about the game. People understood. They said that it's a very expat city. Auckland is. They said the biggest expat population was American, because of all the American accents that they were hearing from all the Americans that went for the games. But I highly recommend. It was a bucket list country for me to visit, and I'm so glad I got out to New Zealand to visit. I want to go back because I didn't get to see all of it that I wanted to, but man, it was just a great time. Great people, great culture, great country, and highly recommend, if any of you get a chance to get to that side of the world, which I know is very difficult for us to do, make a stop in Auckland, Wellington, go to South Island, drink all the wine. The wine was fantastic. Not a lot of rum. They did have gin. But yeah, it was great. So I'll save the rest for one more round, but for the public, New Zealand was absolutely fantastic. Australia was fantastic. Could not thank them enough for their hospitality.
Love it. and before we get to one more round, just to kind of wrap up here on what's next for CONCACAF and the women's game. The next big thing is September. Canada and Jamaica do the Olympic play-in. They're going to play a home-and-home two-leg series. The winner gets into the 2024 Olympics and qualifies automatically for the Concacaf W Gold Cup, which will be taking place in February and March of 2024. After this play-in, the loser has to go to the road to Concacaf W Gold Cup. That's going to be starting in September. Got some group play. The first CONCACAF W Gold Cup will be taking place starting in February, and it'll be teams that qualify out of this and 4 teams from CONMOBIL. Really excited for that. We'll have more coverage of that when it comes, but Canada, Jamaica, I mean, must be nice for Canada to just get that trip down to Jamaica guaranteed.
Well, also, I think for Jamaica, this is again a chance to kind of build off of their successes, right? Like before, when this has happened, everyone's like, "Oh, well, that's Canada is just delaying the inevitable." They finished second to the United States at the W Championship. This is just a formality. But now, when you look at the results of both teams in the World Cup, you go, "Oh, Jamaica might be the hot team, and clearly won't be afraid of Canada, and will have the tools to beat Canada." So they have all their players healthy. Who knows? And with Canada, again, that looming pay dispute situation has rendered their preparation very, very rugged. And so that's going to be an issue. Will they get a camp before this? The answer is probably no. Will they be able to get all their players? And even with their players, will they be fighting their federation as they try to play? That's a bad position to be in. We know, because our team has been in it for a long time. They've been able to, moxie through it, but not every team can do that. So that's a big question entering this particular two-legged race.
Yep. And again, that's coming up in September. I believe it's 22nd and the 26th will be the 2 legs in that FIFA Women's International window. So we'll wrap it up right here. Again, you can follow us social media at Concacaf, POD, CONCACAF. We'll be starting our One More Round episode once we finish wrapping this one. That one will be available on our Patreon, which you can subscribe to at patreon.com/podcacaf. Support the podcast, help us, keep the lights on pretty much for the world of CONCACAF. For Jonathan, for Donald, I'm Eric. We'll talk to you again soon.